and I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass.
A representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. You found the Backstory Podcast. I'm Harry Steele, backwoods Southern lawyer. I have a couple of guests in studio with me today. We're trying to social distance as best we can. Gentlemen, introduce yourselves around the table.
Van Davis, Joey Vines.
And Mr. Davis, you were formerly the director of the Southwest Alabama Police Academy. Is that right?
I was.
And Joey, you were an instructor there?
Under Vans for about 14 years.
Right. And of course, we have the usual suspects on the phone. Raines, I hear you're not going to die of COVID-19.
That's correct. My results finally came back negative. My condition cleared up, and I'm in much better shape than I was physically and mentally.
Excellent. And Mr. Rip, my partner in crime and client, how you doing down there?
Real good, real good. You might want to get Joey's mic a little bit closer or turn it up on his end. We're in the qualification periods right now of municipal elections, and we'll get back to that real soon, but let's go with our guests first, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming in.
So I wanted to run over COVID real quick, just because it seems to be a pressing issue. 12,318,610 confirmed cases worldwide, 3,131,953 in the United States. Baldwin County. I'm assuming Harris County is on the list over on my left. Are they? Yep, you're still on the left, Raines. 40,000 cases. Of course, that's nothing compared to LA, 125,000. You still got the usual stuff. Miami-Dade, 55,000. The Bronx, 48,000. Suffolk County. So scoot in here a little bit on Baldwin County and see how we're doing. All right, there you go, Paul. 1,114 confirmed cases with 10 deaths.
Well, I thought it was interesting, and Raines was saying it right. Vietnam copied the model in Indonesia and places, but they have a population of 100 million people. And the thing that happened in Vietnam was they went right to the face mask. They did the social distancing, shut down, and then got a very good handle on it real quick. And then immediately after that, some of the restrictions were lifted, but they continued to wear masks, and they have reported not one single death. And now they're wearing the mask in an effort to just completely quash it in their area.
Okay, well,
population of 100 million people. And then let me go ahead and say, Harry, since we're on it, there's several articles in the Lanyap about the mask. And this week on Wonderful Wednesday, we ran the article, Stop Being Selfish. It's a letter to the editor, and it's about wearing masks too. So I hope people will take this serious. And anybody thinks this is a hoax, then I just don't know that we could even have a conversation with you if you really seriously believe that. But go ahead, Harry.
All right. So I think I have a video of this. Well, I could just tell you about it. The ICU beds, we're running out of them. So if you can avoid getting sick, by all means, please do it. I don't know what else we can really say about this. Do you guys?
Huntsville, I saw a blip on there about Huntsville being maxed out. Go ahead, Ryan.
That's and not only do everything you can to keep yourself from getting sick, do everything you can from other people sick, and that's where the mask comes in. You've really got to do that to stop the spread of the disease, to make sure that you're not getting anybody else sick in case you are asymptomatic. Here in Houston, we've got as many people in the greater Houston metro area as you do in Alabama, just about. I think the population in Alabama is almost 5 million. We have 4.7 million here, just in Harris County, Texas.
Yeah.
And the mayor of Houston has taken grand steps. The judge, the county judge, who is our emergency management director for during a crisis, has taken extraordinary steps to enforce mask orders and to make sure that people are masking up and not getting out. Because if you just let them be, if you just let a Texan be, they're going to do whatever the hell they want. And that's one of the reasons we're in the place that we are here in Houston right now, is because people have just gone out and done whatever they wanted. The same reason Florida's in bad shape and everybody else is because people are just doing what you got to have somebody telling you to not do it. And hopefully our county judge and mayor are doing something about it and defying the brilliant governor that we have. I think just about every state in the union can say that right now, the brilliant governor that we have.
All right. So I want to, Paul, you remember we talked about the county's going to spend $40 million to build 600 bed tower at the law enforcement facility here in Bay Minette, right?
Correct.
They're also buying the municipal court and police complex across the street from the city of Bay Minette.
Right.
Okay, so one day a week, the driver's license people come to Bay Minette on Wednesday, and if your kid needs a driver's test or you got to get your license reinstated or whatever, you could go to Bay Minette one day a week, which was convenient for people who live in Blackshirt, that it's a 2-hour drive for them to Foley, right, Joey? I mean, it's a long damn ways to Foley or Fairhope from Little River. So anyhow, I go to this meeting. Me and Mr. Malone, who used to work for the telephone company, and he's retired, are the only two people that show up because it's on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. And guess who all's got a mask on?
Just you.
The mayor, the police chief, the city administrator, all these state troopers, a couple guys from the drug task force were there. I have no idea why, but anyway, two people not on the payroll of the government to be at the meeting. And I was the only person with a mask on. Now, you got to understand that morning I was in Mobile where it was illegal to be on the street without a mask on. And I was in the courtroom where when a lawyer approached the podium to address the court, he pulled his mask down and the judge threatened to fine him. So it's all over the place. There's zero leadership, especially in my hometown, especially in Bay Minette. No leadership whatsoever on the issue. Not setting an example. And actually, I kind of felt a little peer pressure to take the damn mask off in a room full of law enforcement dressed like a bandit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. So
Especially you, Harry.
Especially me. Yeah. Well, these guys kind of know about what's been going on with me a little bit too, boys. So they're not uninitiated on a good bit of this stuff. But I want to read an article. This was published in the Baldwin Times, December 17th, 1992. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it was by Jimmy Faulkner, who the Faulkner State Community College was named for. And it's praising the Southwest Alabama Police Academy on graduating its 108th class. Now, remember, this was in 92. 30 years later, at the 30-year anniversary, they had actually graduated 149. Was your last class?
Yeah.
And this says that these were efforts by the Law Enforcement Planning Agency and then Sheriff Taylor Wilkins to locate this at the community college. And then some other folks, the ABC board people and some other people with influence got involved. And it became a model for other police academies around the Southeast.
That's what occurred.
So if you would, there's a map that everybody can see on the screen. Would you pick that up for me and just take a look at it?
You want Van too?
Yeah, Van or you, whoever, because everybody else is seeing it on the screen. So you see the state of Alabama broken down into 4 quadrants, right?
Yes.
And so up in Calhoun County, that's Jacksonville State, the top right, the yellow.
Right.
And then over to the west is Tuscaloosa.
Correct.
And then to the south, you have us down here in Baldwin County. That was SWAPA.
Correct.
Okay, what's this over in Coffee County?
At the beginning, that was the Wiregrass Academy, and it was located in Enterprise, Alabama.
And then what was over in Houston? Was that an extension of your academy eventually?
We extended into Houston County at a later time.
Okay.
And we did that because the Enterprise program closed down. And then the reason being, they basically wanted to start a driving academy. There was a driving academy available, and it was an outstanding program. They had cars, they had trucks, they could come to your department and do training, and they came to the various regional academies and did training. Well, at any rate, what happened is it became the Enterprise Driving Academy. When the load of students started to develop more over in the Wiregrass area, they decided to move us into the Wiregrass Academy in a branch program per year. We started out in Dothan, Alabama, and it became the Wiregrass Academy, and that's the name we went by. And we operated in this zone, basically covering the Crenshaw, Pike, and Barber counties and everything south. Those were the predominant areas where we would get people.
So what I wanted to get to was you guys were handling everything south of Montgomery
Correct.
For 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. You trained everybody that was a police officer pretty much.
Trained everybody that was a police officer, county deputy, mental health officers at one time. We had conservation. We had everything other than the Department of Public Safety.
Okay. So I don't want to start on that yet. So I just want to talk a little bit about who is this character, Alan Benefield. So I have his deposition, and this is the deposition of Dr. Marion Holt, and he's suing the Alabama Peace Officers Training and Standards Commission back in 1999 for being illegally fired, and this was a prelude to your lawsuit, Mr. Vines. So way back when, in his deposition, he says, among other people involved in this thing.
Time out, Harry.
Yes, sir.
Time out, Harry. A little too many pronouns for me to follow. Can you just clarify who sued who?
Yes, sir.
And who lost their job before you go further?
So the Regional Academy in Tuscaloosa had a director. He was a professor. I'm assuming he's a doctor, Dr. Marion Holt. And Alan Benefield, who was the former chief of police in Ozark, Alabama.
Right.
And he was a member of the board, found a job for himself when he needed one as their executive secretary. So way back in 98, he goes and hires his buddy. And what was his name?
John Nichilson.
John Nichilson. And Mr. Nichilson goes up and leads an investigation into corruption at the University of Alabama Police Training Facility. So Dr. Holt says they came in there and just railroaded him. He didn't have anything to do with any of this stuff going on. And he lost his job anyway. So they shut down the school, reapportioned the money back to APOST. Then they go do the same thing. There was another investigation at the Northeast Alabama Police Academy in Jacksonville. And who was the fellow that was running that place?
Joe Sparks was a gentleman that was in charge of the academy there. And he just attended a post-commission meeting that we all had to go quarterly to Montgomery and attend those meetings. He attended a post-commission meeting and stood up and said, "I quit."
So let me explain to you guys, the reason that these things are all located at universities is because they needed dormitories, they needed athletic facilities, they needed all these things, and these universities provided that. So what happened was, these people that are sitting here with me now did not work for APOST. They worked for Faulkner State Community College. But somehow there was an investigation down here, the third investigation. And what year was that, Van?
That was in 2003.
Okay. So it's my understanding that there was a violation of the public bid law, and that your bookkeeper, Ms. Vines, your mother.
Correct.
Now, just tell us a little bit about how the investigation happened.
They basically, after this occurred at these others, they contacted us and said there was going to be an audit. And they asked us to get all of our stuff out, squared away, and have it ready, and an audit would be conducted. And this continued on for quite a while, the threat of an audit being conducted. And finally, in 2003, in 2002, they came in and did an audit. John Nichilson, who was the investigator, came in and sort of coordinated the audit under Alan Benefield's direction. And they ended up with findings and asked us in January of 2003 to come to Montgomery. We came to Montgomery, and when I say come to Montgomery, they asked me and Johnny Vines to come to Montgomery. And they had a closed door meeting, and then they called us in, and then they basically said, y'all are fired, y'all are dismissed. And then it changed to fired. And then we left the building and came back to Bamanette, and they met us at the door. That the investigator met us at the door and cracked the door of the facility just enough for me to reach my hand inside to show him how to work the alarm system. And then as I removed my hand, he pushed the door shut and advised me that I didn't need to be back on these premises ever again until the commission said otherwise, if they were going to say otherwise. And I walked to my vehicle, got in it, and that was it.
Okay, so there was one violation of the public bid law. Ms. Vines was convicted of doing business with her husband's company in violation of the public bid law, getting T-shirts and hats and that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Okay, y'all weren't buying Maseratis from her husband's company or anything like that.
Nothing along those lines.
And just like the case in Tuscaloosa and Jacksonville, I'll tell you, Mr. Vines, I know exactly who you are, and I've known exactly who you were for. Sorry, I've known exactly who you people were down at SWAPA, and I can tell you that everybody knew about this case. Mm-hmm. Okay, but nobody knew anything about it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
Okay. So when all this was going on in Tuscaloosa, you're a regional academy director down here. You don't know anything about the investigation. You just know there's some financial irregularities, right?
I was told there were some financial problems, not irregularities.
Okay.
That left it there.
And so you didn't feel like they were marching in your direction as all these academies are tumbling? I mean, did you have a sneaking suspicion that this was going to happen?
At the time, no. When this happened at Tuscaloosa, I thought, well, maybe Ron, and I knew Ron real well. But Marion Holt, he went by Ron. I knew Ron real well, and I called him, and he said, they're doing an audit, but I feel sure we'll be covered on it. And I said, good, and I wish you the best of luck. And he, like myself, didn't realize what was going on. And then he was gone. And then Joe made that announcement at the December, I think it was, meeting that year that he was just quitting, and he was being investigated at that time.
So here's everybody's looking at the disposition of your case being null prost in 2011.
Yes.
Now they dismissed you in 2003, right?
Right.
Okay. So this is the Alabama Ethics Commission telling you that they've investigated and nothing further is going to happen.
Correct.
So how does somebody go forward with an investigation when the Ethics Commission didn't turn it over to the DA's office?
My understanding was that Benefield kept hounding the Department of Public Safety till some type of investigation was conducted. I don't know what that investigation was.
And we'll never know.
No.
We'll never know. So after you were dismissed, you and your brother filed a lawsuit.
Right.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what your allegation was that they couldn't fire you. You didn't work for them, right?
They hired me and put me on Faulkner's payroll.
Yep.
So I didn't think Alan Benefield had any power over me.
Well, so let me tell you guys about a very interesting story here. So Mr. Vines and his brother file a lawsuit against Alan Benefield and the Alabama Standards and Police Officer Standards and Training Commission. Immediately, Mr. Benefield files a response and says, you should dismiss this case because I have state immunity. The trial court says, we've done no discovery. I don't have anything to base your allegation on because it's improper for me to dismiss at this time. So they file for a writ of mandamus all the way to the Supreme Court, and there is a special exception when someone claims immunity. They can hear the case. Grounds on the claim of immunity, and that's ex parte writs for anybody who's following along and wants to go read this stuff for themselves. So the bottom line in all this is the Supreme Court says, well, the only evidence we have to go on is the affidavit that Mr. Benefield filed contemporaneously with his writ of mandamus. So all we can do is assume that Mr. Benefield's told us the truth and he didn't act outside the scope of his job. So case dismissed.
Wow.
That's sovereign immunity. That's qualified immunity. That's how it works.
No, sir, that's not how it works. It's a burden.
That's how sovereign immunity works.
It's a burden shift. So there was a burden shift. When they claimed immunity, it was on his lawyer to prove that he did act outside the scope of his job. Okay, just how the hell is he supposed to do that, Raines?
You don't.
There's no record for him to rely on. They didn't ask him to come up there for oral argument.
That's the whole point of sovereign immunity. It's blanket.
No, sir, it's not. It is not. And and if you look at this pattern in practice and you go back and look and see the law enforcement that was getting turned out by these guys, they weren't running people off the road, going the wrong way down the interstate. They weren't shooting people with long guns. There wasn't all this mayhem going on. We were getting a good product for the money that the state and the federal government were putting up to train police officers. And my allegation is that this system was co-opted, and at least $600,000 of this money is going towards salaries in Montgomery, not to train police officers in Baldwin County.
All right, I kind of feel like you've got a little bit of apples and oranges there, but I'll say this: as far as the reputation of training of officers under these gentlemen, I would stipulate to that because it's I believe it was evident. That's self-evident. However, I think you're comparing their ability to train police officers to the sovereign immunity laws of the state of Alabama, and I don't think that dog won't hunt, man.
You don't understand. These people did what the hell they wanted to because they knew they could claim sovereign immunity. And I'm saying the position switch of sovereign immunity, the burden being put on the plaintiff to prove that these people acted maliciously and outside the scope of their jobs, they got to do that pre-trial. I mean, we can't I can't depose Mr. Benefield and find out just what in the hell he was doing. It makes no sense to me.
All right, fair enough.
It was not right to be heard because they did not have any facts to consider. Okay,
I understand that. I understand. All right. Well, I got a couple of questions, and as usual, I'll preface it with a story. Mr. Davis, do you know who? Have you ever heard the name Carolyn Frazier? She was a police chief in Jackson County, Mississippi, in a little town called Ocean Springs. She was the first female police chief in the state. Are you familiar?
I remember her being appointed, but I never heard a story about it.
Well, she was the police chief of my hometown. That's where I'm from. And when I was a journalist in that 10 years, and one of the questions I had to ask her, and she had been a lifelong friend of mine, and I'm friends with her family, was friends with her son, friends with her husband, who owned a local pawn shop and firearms dealership. One of the questions I had to pose to her was there was an ethics complaint filed against her in 1994. I was in college at the time, and I was down there, and I found out about the ethics complaint, and I went to my editor, and he said, you know what, go confront her straight away about it. And I sat down across from her in her office and I said, how this may be legal. This may be fine. And everything's going to come up daisies on this ethics complaint. But what were you thinking? Because what she did is that she put out a bid to rearm the police department. It wasn't a very big bid because it wasn't a very big department. And her husband's company came in as the very low bid on the contract to supply her office with, good God, what were those terrible guns they used? They were the first Smith & Wesson composite. They were a Smith & Wesson All-American or something like that. They were just junk guns. But she rearmed the department using that, and somebody filed a state ethics complaint and said, it seems that you tipped off your husband to the bid amount, and he came in much lower than everybody else did. And I asked her straight away, I said, what were you thinking when you even proposed that he come in on this bid? You knew there was going to be scrutiny, and it's obvious that he knew what the low bid was. Well, she said, I followed the letter of the law. And the ethics investigation that came out of it, and our ethics commission back then in the state of Mississippi didn't take 8 years to conduct an investigation. They took about 8 days, and they came back and said, all right, it's shady, but it's within the bounds of the law.
Well, listen, if everybody would have just shut their mouths and gone away, they wouldn't have prosecuted anybody. But keep going.
Well, that's my question, and I'm not making an accusation, but I'll ask you the same question. What were you thinking when you guys bought stuff and you thought, did it ever cross your mind that this may become a problem in the future? And I'm not making an accusation. I'm just asking about the mindset of that decision.
No, it did not. I had tried other places prior to even getting involved with ASA, which was a company at that time. The shirts were no quality. They were tearing up. The police departments were complaining about the quality of stuff we had. I said, the heck with it. We want a quality type item. We wrote up what we wanted, and nobody came forward to bid in any way. And then Johnny's husband, said he thought he could do the job, so I gave him the job.
Okay, fair enough. That clears up a lot of it. Was there any thought when you were the administrator of this instructional institution, was there any thought to, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess pre-planning for damage control. Were you aware of the corruption and the things that could have been directed at you? I mean, I guess my question is, did you have kind of a long view as far as the strategy goes? And one of your things in your head was, let's not give them any ammunition.
No, not so. I'm probably a type of individual that'll move in one direction after I've given it some thought, but none of those things ever came across my mind. I've always been somebody that will act, not sit and ponder.
I can understand that. I come from a long line of strategic thinkers. We're constantly planning 10 steps ahead. I'm a political consultant now. That's what I'm paid to do, is think 10 steps ahead for people's political strategies.
So Raines, if somebody put this out in the paper about you, that they were going to come after you for this $10,000 you stole, I think David Whetstone owes you an apology.
I think David owes me a lot.
He ever call you, Van?
Never has.
You never.
Don't even get me going on Whetstone.
Whetstone and I went way back. We were very close at one time.
He taught in the academy too.
He did. He worked with us some. You're talking about people in 90% of the cases I'd worked closely with and been involved with in a lot of things over the years. And, it happened. And basically, Whetstone really, it hurt me when Whetstone run his mouth several times during that issue.
All right, so let me tell you how this stuff works, guys. There was a lady who'd worked for many years at the Examiners of Public Accounts as an auditor, and she's the one who's tapped to come down and audit SWAPA. Well, of course, she finds something because that's her job, and then she is prosecuted. Guess who the prosecutor was of Ms. Vines? Paul.
Oh.
State Rep Matt Simpson. So he puts this lady, Brenda Taylor, on the stand from the Examiners of Public Accounts, and he says, Miss Taylor, what's your job now? And she says, well, hell, I'm the chief financial officer at Bishop State Community College. So then they get on over into the testimony, and they say, well, look, we got some, we asked for some discovery from Bishop State Community College, and we see here that you're saying this, what was the name of Ms. Vine's company?
ASA.
ASAPs is a bunch of thieves. What, here's your financial records. You're doing business with them right now. Bishop State was doing business with them. So anyway, this whole thing stinks to high heaven. It was a setup, a put up, a co-option, whatever you want to call it. And what has suffered is the education and training of our law enforcement. So
I can agree with that. I would ask, how many other investigations have these two gentlemen, Mr. Benefield and Mr. Nichols, conducted in the state since 2003?
I have no idea.
I mean, is it a large number? I mean, are they the reformers of the Alabama law enforcement instructional institution, or was it just a serious hatchet job against?
All right, so
against
Rain,
somebody else needed a job?
let me tell you why the first thing I told you was significant. The enabling law for the APOST board says that they can have two employees, an executive secretary, which is Chief Benefield, and a clerical person. So Benefield takes money that's supposed to be coming to SWAPA and goes and hires his buddy from Ozark to come work for him to be an investigator. Now, here's how the investigator's job is supposed to work. If you apply to APOST, you want to be a police officer. John Nicholson's job was to run you through and make sure you didn't have a criminal record or you weren't trying to disguise who you really were. I mean, they didn't want to train somebody to be a certified police officer if they had a felony or something, right? So that was his job. It was never to go be some freelance investigator to go work with other entities. It was
they had one person doing that for the entire state?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And so now and I've got the appropriations. We've already gone over that, but the state appropriations show there's $100,000 coming to Baldwin County, or $93,000 coming to Baldwin County for APOST Baldwin County. And the only thing I can figure is they're calling the sheriff's pistol range down here APOST Baldwin County.
They moved the SWAPA sign out there.
So the sign is there.
Oh, yes, the sign is there.
But no full-time instructors. No, there's a clerical person, and she was there before, right?
Bullman. She testified.
And she testified, and her entire testimony, I can tell you. I'm sitting there. Well, I don't know. Well, you can call it what you want. I can just say it was.
She said she worked for Alan Benefield, and Van Davis hired her and put her on Faulkner.
Yeah, she was just confused. She didn't understand who hired her. Okay, so there's another trend going around the state, and I want to know what you guys think about it. I'm going to present a little video, I hope. Let's see. Well, we'll watch this one first.
County jail.
Two-thirds of those individuals in the County Correction Center either have a pending drug charge, past drug charge, or their current crime they're charged with was linked to a drug activity.
The war on drugs will most likely never be won.
We know that the drugs that are on the table before you today will not be consumed. We know that the guns that are on the table before you today will not hurt anybody else.
So law enforcement will keep fighting. On the Baldwin County beat, Debbie Williams, News 5.
So far this year, the task force has made 37 significant arrests for trafficking and distribution of illegal drugs.
Well, do you think that's true? I mean, he says it is. I mean, you guys were around. Do we really have is 80% of the people in jail for drugs?
I wouldn't know. I mean, I wouldn't know what the ratio is on any of that.
All right, so I want to show y'all a video of, we're not going to watch the whole thing.
In Cherokee County, we have the Cherokee County Major Crimes Unit, which is essentially a task force that every law enforcement agency in Cherokee County is a part of. the Center Police Department, Leesburg Police Department, Cedar Bluff Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, and the District Attorney's Office. That was formed in late 2014. Our Sheriff, Jeff Shaver, District Attorney Mike Odell, and the police chiefs teamed together and decided that we need to make some changes to be more successful on major crimes. With the assistance from ADECA and helping us start that project with grant funding, we were able to start that major crimes unit here in Cherokee County. That unit works all major crimes with.
Do you see JSU Center for Applied Forensics on the side of that? Well, you can't see
homicide, shooting, serious assault, sex crimes, major drug crimes, arsons, any felony crimes against persons. When something.
All right. All sounds like a real good concept, right?
That sheriff looks like he's about 22 years old.
Yeah.
So Van, you heard what the Major Crimes Unit is supposed to do, but another thing they do here in Baldwin County is they investigate any kind of officer-involved mayhem. Okay? Instead of calling in ALEA, or it was the ABI back in your day, this theoretical separate entity, the Major Crimes Unit, is investigating. Well, Paul, there was one in Daphne the other day, right?
Correct. Well, it's not the other day. This has been going on for a little bit of time, but correct. Derek Powe. He was Baldwin County Major Crimes Unit is the one investigating it. Now, this is the fifth incident that the Backstory Podcast and Lanyap has been looking into, and all five are being investigated by essentially their own officers. So, and no outside agency has come in at all so far, which is and the other thing is on four of them, the police were called to try to contain a situation. And the result was that somebody lost their life in every one. And 5 people lost their life in the pursuit up the wrong way of I-10. But my point is not the individual cases as much as it is the cases being investigated internally by themselves. You talked about building the jail, and the Bay Minette police were going to be housed with the county police. Well, these guys are all friends and buddies, and they shouldn't be put in a position to have to investigate each other.
Or they went to the academy together.
Correct.
So the Yates case was an eviction, guys, and it turns out the owner of the property, his son, was a sheriff's deputy, and he's the one serving the eviction papers. So they go cop knock the door, nobody answers. They take a crowbar, or some kind of implement, go start breaking the door down, and they claim there was a shot fired inside the trailer. So they then call in the SWAT team, 10 SWAT members, and there's a 5-hour standoff. They get everybody out of the area, do all that kind of setup and stuff. I don't know. They did not account for their they tried to get him out of there with tear gas for 3 hours. I don't know how long you can stand tear gas, Paul Rip, but 3 hours sounds like a hell.
Not me.
So
I stood about 3 minutes in the Marine Corps. That was all I could take.
And then they shot 114 rounds inside the mobile home once they breached. He had a history of mental issues.
Now 114 rounds were the number of rounds that were counted. There was even more shell casings there, and the one of the lead investigators told the family that all 114 rounds were shot inside the trailer, when it was more than obvious the shell casings were outside the trailer, and the trailer as you pointed out, Harry, as a crime scene.
Right.
And they destroyed the trailer.
They tore it down within a week.
Yeah.
Whole
So
thing's gone. Nobody could have lived in it if it had been soaked in damn tear gas for 3 hours. So then you have Derek Powell. He was the mentally ill 29-year-old. He was actually shot by Daphne PD, but of course the MCU's investigating it, and the director of the major crimes units, the assistant chief, and Daphne. So then you have Jonathan, the wrong way pursuit down I-10. They were pursuing two suspects. They pursued the violation of the pursuit policy. It was absolutely a violation of the Baldwin County pursuit policy, okay? If you're in an unmarked car, you don't chase somebody the wrong way down an interstate. And when somebody's doing something super dangerous, you disengage the pursuit. At least that's the policy I read online.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was obviously a violation of the policy. So here's what happened. Because it was a traffic collision accident, Aaliyah comes in and investigates what killed everybody. This car hit that car. This person burned to death. This person died of injuries sustained from trauma or whatever. But then the who shot John of the chasing them and all that stuff was left up to the MCU.
Correct.
I mean, they're here. Why not investigate it? So then you have Jonathan Victor, who's driving from Metairie, Louisiana on I-10. He runs off the interstate in the middle of the road. They stop the interstate both ways. A sheriff deputy drops the tailgate of a truck to steady his battle rifle on and stitches the guy up when he's like 15 feet away from him. I mean, couldn't you? And maybe you taught to shoot to kill. I don't know, but sure seems like
the service weapon. Where is that at?
You talking about a sidearm?
Yes, pistol.
Okay, well, I don't know that they call that a service weapon anymore, do they? I mean, now they've got a plethora of weapons, long guns, shotguns.
Man would know. I mean,
he was 15 feet away.
Well, you got to understand, he was coming at him, and he had a fanny pack in his hand. They couldn't tell what it was, and this guy had. Nobody knows because they won't give us the body cam video. The Lanyap is sued. Have they sued him for it? They did sue him for it.
They have sued him for it, and it's pending right now. And that's another thing. Why should there be such resistance in giving that up? And they have control of the investigation, so that's why they're not giving it up.
It's totally incestuous. There's supposed to be an external organization looking into this stuff, not guys that go to pool parties together on the weekend or go bass fishing or whatever together. Anyway,
well, that's the 4 cases, Harry. You haven't mentioned the 5th one. You want me to run over that one?
Yes, sir.
I want you gentlemen to listen to this because this is the most incredible thing I've ever heard of. This young man was found in an automobile. A juvenile was driving the car, his girlfriend, and he was strangled to death by a seatbelt. Now, the passerby that eventually helped him get out of cut him free from the seatbelt, said that the seatbelt was around his neck so tight that he couldn't undo the seatbelt. He had to cut the seatbelt with his knife. Well, first of all, there's no possible conceivable way that anybody could strangle themselves with a seatbelt to that point. In other words, pull it tight enough themselves to actually lock it like that. Then I think it was a couple of years later or whatnot, it comes to light that this young man was a confidential informant and that the handler for him as a confidential informant is now the police chief in Bay Minette and looks like might possibly be tapped by Hossmack to be the next sheriff. No investigation, no nothing. It's just out there in limbo. And it's bizarre to me that you could have these type of, and these are allegations because no one's investigated. We don't know. We're just trying to get to the bottom of it.
I've investigated it.
Okay,
and I've given my findings to the district attorney. I guess
and
who
what
the
happened?
Attorney secretary is
And what happened?
the police chief's wife. I sent him a dang email, and before I fired it off, I was like, "Man, you know, she's gonna read that before he does." It is what it is.
Wow.
So so the guys who were assigned by the sheriff to investigate this boy's death, the official statement from the sheriff's department said he wrapped a seatbelt around his neck and jumped out of a moving car. Now, what I found out to be true, now this is totally inconsistent with the statements of the witnesses or the physical evidence, but this is what's put out in a press release the same day they go to investigate.
And it was declared a suicide. How fast, Harry?
Well, they said it. They said it was a suicide when they did the press release the same day.
Yeah, same day.
Yeah.
With all of that suspicious activity, they just immediately said, "Oh, this is a suicide." And of course, it never came to light that there was any peripheral involvement with this guy being a confidential informant or anything like that.
All right. So here's my theory. Raines and I have talked about this, and you guys, you know, I may be completely wrong.
No.
How did you train people? In my mind, if I'm a police officer and I'm trying to take you into custody and you put your hands on me, all I'm thinking is he's going for my gun and I better get to it first.
Yes. Well, that's what Van taught. First thing you do is you grab your weapon, you put your hand over your weapon and keep it in the holster.
Okay.
Weapon retention is a big issue. And if you lose your weapon, you lose your life.
Yep.
Okay. So back in your day, there were batons that you could keep somebody. What happened to the baton?
I don't know what happened to the baton.
But you taught it, right?
Yes. You had the PR-24 and you had the straight baton. The PR-24 is a baton that had a little handle and you have your straight baton and you have your handle on it.
Right.
Now that is a fantastic weapon for close quarter involvement. And it requires skill. You have to work with a baton. The thing is, any training that is done, and we looked good doing it, but we do it every day and that sort of thing. So the results is you can use these tools, but if you don't practice with those things every day, you're not going to be proficient with them. Defensive tactics, you can do all these nifty little moves and look good like you see on TV, and I'm sure a lot of people get infatuated with it. I know a lot of police officers get infatuated with close quarter contact by virtue of they were taught this and that. If they practice these things, they can use those things. If they do not practice that, it'll be a halfway performance on their part,
right,
at best. And, these are things that, are up to the individual departments to keep up on, up to the individual. An individual officer, an officer gets a badge and he goes on duty. It doesn't stop there. For him to be proficient dealing with these people. I remember there was one statistic that always stuck out with me, and I'm sure it may change a little now, but it was that the average assault on a police officer at that time, and I say at that time, the person was 18 years of age to around 28, 18 to 28. Now, the fact is that doesn't matter if you're a police officer and you're out there and you're 20. Hey, showtime, you can deal with that. But the fact is when you are dealing with the situation and you get older, that 18 to 28 is still there. That's where the problem is. And you're now 34 and you're going to bounce out of a car and go up to them. You got a major problem if the last time you thought about a takedown technique was 7 years ago. These are things that come into play.
I keep getting older and they all stay the same.
Yep. That's it.
So my contention is that every law enforcement officer should train 8 out of 40 hours a week.
That would be a very good thing if they did that.
So what do you think about less lethal? Did you ever train anybody to use a beanbag shotgun or a rubber bullet or anything like that?
Beanbag shotguns were not around then. They were discussing utilization of them and all. We used close quarter contact. We used basic street techniques, fighting. We taught how to counter a blow, how to strike, areas to strike on the body, pressure point techniques. All of these things, I guess they're still being taught. Now, Mr. Benefield would be the one that could tell you, I guess, what's being taught
since
now.
He's in charge. Well, hell, I've been by his office 3 damn times. He's never there.
Oh, let me ask you, gentlemen, a question, and this might not have been as big an issue back then as it is now. When I look at let's build a new 650 bed capacity, $35 million jail. Well, the one thing I absolutely just cannot believe police officers are having to deal with now is the mental health issues. And I mean, they're police officers. They're not trained that much in mental health issues. And I was wondering, you're going to put 35 million in an expansion for a 650 bed jail, but no one is talking about putting a dime into the mental health. So how much of a problem when you gentlemen were teaching was, calls related to mental health issues?
There were a lot of tragic causes that occurred with that. I can name many altercations that occurred where the officers were, injured, not injured seriously, but they did end up dealing with a violator who had mental health issues and ended up having to get in a scuffle or a takedown situation with them. We worked with that. There's a lot that goes in. A lot goes into verbal contact when you talk with people. You got to be able to get their attention, and you need to talk to them. And if you're watching their hands, and if you're keeping a distance, you should be in fairly decent shape, or at least you should be aware of the certain danger techniques that individuals possess or show when they're fixing to go into an altercation with you. And these are things that should be stressed. And then you need to learn, these officers need to be able to talk with the individuals. You got to be able to talk with them and hopefully tone the situation down. You're dealing with a person's emotions. You're dealing with a person's stability. You're dealing with a person that is looking at you and may see a whole horrible looking monster or whatever he was thinking about at that time with certain mental abnormalities. And the results is you need to back away, assess these situations, and then hopefully get additional help in, or, get a way to contain and keep that person in place and get him the help that he needs. He's going to have to be arrested, true, but I mean, you have to get him the help that he needs too.
All right, so let's talk about getting people help real quick.
Investigating what they're calling a murder-suicide of Highway 9 in Elsinore.
Investigators say a man shot his fiancée inside her home before.
Homeowners are raving about it.
You gotta be kidding me. So let me get to that one. This girl calls the sheriff's deputy, says, I got in a fight with my boyfriend. I'm kind of worried about it. Blah, 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 blah. Well, did he hit you? No. So then the next day, she doesn't show up to pick up her kid, and she's murdered, and he's offed himself. Terrible.
You've got, he called the 911.
She did.
She did. She called
from a friend's house the night before.
Okay. Well, I guess they logged that, or did they?
There's a log of it because we know about it.
Okay.
Let me ask another question. This is more out of curiosity. For a very, very short period, I was in military police. Now, we never approached a car. they had to get out of the car. I mean, we didn't go up to cars. And it always made them, you know, when I realized, got back to the States and I saw the way police have to walk up to the car, man, that would unnerve me. Of course, I wasn't trained that way, but I always wondered if you were in a situation where you really had a lot of suspect on the individual, if it wasn't safer for the officer to be able to tell him to get out of the car before he had to approach the car.
Well, yes, there you can direct a person out of the car. It just depends on the circumstance. You wouldn't, if you're stopping somebody and they ran a stop sign. Now, granted, this person, for people out there listening, say it could be a violator and he could have a gun. Now, there's a possibility of that, but you got this person that has run a stop sign. You can approach the vehicle and talk to the person or ticket the person or whatever you want to do. That's an approach. If you're suspicious of suspicious activity, you see them moving something around in the car, they're adjusting their rearview mirror to watch you as you approach the car, you can stop at that point and direct them out of the car. We taught a lot of options to individuals. We taught the officer to think about what's going on and observe what is going on. And if you got good observation skills, as you walk up to the car, you can always say, "Sir, ma'am, would you put your hands on the steering wheel where I can see them?" And, you know, do it in a calm voice, not a threatening voice or anything like that. You can just start to evaluate the situation that you're looking at and take it from there. It may require nothing. It may require telling the person to get out of the car. It may require calling back up and getting the individual out of the car. It may require you getting him out of the car and arresting him and handcuffing him. But I mean, you know, all of these things, most officers now have the radios, which I think is a great idea, attached to their bodies so they don't have to run back to a car and try to get to a radio. So, you know, there are all those options available out there. It depends. We're talking about stuff here that goes back to the training, and it goes back to the policies that are in place with the departments and the individual officers, what they're willing to put forward to make themselves safe and at the same time keep the public safe.
I've got two questions. One is I guess it made me think of it when Paul just asked his. I've always been informed, not always, but in the last 10 years, been informed that there's a technique, and I want to know if it's actually taught or if it's just some thing that people say is there, that when officers approach a vehicle, they're taught to touch the area above the tail light or the rear fender so that there's DNA or hand or fingerprints on the vehicle.
They do that now, Raines. I observed that.
Is that an actual taught?
Yes, we touched on that too, and you know, having the officers do that, and I'm certain they're doing it now.
I got pulled over last week, and that damn bayonet cop was more nervous than I was. He let me go in about 10 seconds.
Well, I guess so. You're a maniac, according to the sheriff.
Well, Van thought all this very hands-on. You got to realize there was an officer survival in the police academy, and we took the officers outside, and they went through every bit of this was what he's talking about.
Yeah, you went through actually.
Van taught it.
And we dealt with blanks and stuff of that nature.
And y'all can't tell, but Van's about 6'8" or something. He's way bigger guy than I am.
Yeah,
way
I had
taller
to fight
guy. Yeah, nobody wanted to go. That was a long freaking day when you had to go through hand-to-hand combat with Van.
And with the baton, that man is deadly.
You know, the police also, I mean, I've witnessed this before, and I don't get it, because when I grew up, you were taught a police officer stopped you, it was yes sir, no sir, and that was it. You showed respect to him. But I've been in cars before where people got pulled over for a legitimate reason, and the officer walk up to the door and they said, "Why in the hell did you stop me?" and start screaming at them. And I'm going like, holy crap. And on both of the instances where I was in the car with this individual, I was trying to get him to calm down. And the officer, both times, 100% professional. Didn't let it rattle him. just kept on, but he stuck it to them both on the ticket and they deserved it. So, you know, I just don't get when people get stopped by police starting the conversation with an argument. And I'm sure that's what you were talking about a while ago, telling and instructing, you know, potential officers on just how you handled something like that, you know?
Right. You can easily tell the person when they start ranting and raving like that, you can easily tell the person this is just going to take a little bit longer than you probably would have had to deal with me. And, you know, you're not going anywhere. You're here with me. And that tones down a lot of bad mouthing individuals when they realize, hey, I'm here and he's not backing off. And that's just part of the turf. Police officers take a lot of abuse.
I can tell you this because I've been trained this way. But one of the biggest techniques that activists are taught is it's called escalate +1. And it honestly, it goes back to the civil rights era, but we are taught through certain channels that if you're ever acting in a political manner or a protest or anything like that, if you are detained by a single officer, escalate it to the point where a second officer has to attend the scene because you want witnesses there. So I don't know if you ever had to deal with that, but that's something even in this day and age, we teach activists to escalate just enough to where another officer gets involved so that there's more than one body camera, there's more than one account. And it's not always a great outcome, but it's something that is taught. But I know we've talked about a lot of individual cases. I want to ask a very broad-reaching question. Mr. Davis, you were in charge of training law enforcement officers during a paradigm shift in our nation's handling of the correction system. I just to give you some background so you know that I didn't load up on this. I am a very vocal anti-privatized prison advocate, and I work tirelessly against the privatized prison initiative. You were present you were there when that paradigm shift happened, when at a departmental level, almost nationwide, it went from the priority is de-escalate to the priority is make an arrest. Was that ever a shift at the academy level in your experience, or did you constantly teach de-escalation in lieu of arrest?
We constantly, I would have to say we were more on a de-escalation level than an arrest level. Now, I say that in respect of what general officer violator contact. We did not take robbery suspects or crimes in progress and teach that in that capacity, but we taught a de-escalation type of situation. You don't want to get hurt. You don't want the person you're dealing with to get hurt. You want the compliance of the law that you think has been broken. And that's basically what you're trying to do, you know, but we did not teach that in respect to violent crimes or a hostile individual.
Of course not. Does that, do you feel like that has changed at the academy level?
Well, I do not have a clue as to what's going on at the academy level. I walked away from that years ago, but the thing is, I do have a lot of concerns like the general public has in respect to the police killings that are happening in this country right now. That bothers me. I mean, it's just unprecedented that this type of thing is occurring. And at the same time, some of these issues and instances occur that the cameras are able to pick up, as you so rightly say. You've got somebody there and you've got people recording nowadays. Some of the comments and accurate statements made by officers, You know, it's like anything else when you're dealing with a confrontation. The opening statements usually control where this thing is going.
Yes.
It's better to have the bad person or the non-police officer, let me put it that way, the non-police officer to open the thing with in a negative aspect than it is for the officer to start with a negative approach, because all you're going to do is either intimidate the individual, and they're going to stereotype all police is just like you are, or you're either going to make the person so violently upset you're really going to get an incident occurring, and then who's right and who's wrong. You see a lot of that now.
Yes, agreed.
Oh, let me ask you this: in a couple of these cases that I were talking about, the 5 cases, and 2 of the cases, that a similarity that I noticed was that on both occasions, in the midst of the confusion and the police trying to answer the call, the family was in contact with the police, and one in Daphne, they said, well, we can talk to him. Let us talk to him. The one, Mr. Yates, the family had even tried to call this was their father. They tried to call their father on the phone. And this really surprised me, was that when they tried to call their father on the phone, it immediately went to the police on the scene. And so the family member was saying, look, there's no need. We can be there immediately. We can calm this situation down. We can get him to come out. Please just wait. Let us participate. They hung up on her, and that's when the 114 rounds were shot.
Yeah,
so
right. Her allegation is that they intercepted her cell phone call to her father.
Right.
I didn't know they had that capability. Of course, they got infrared drones and any damn other thing they need.
Well, yeah, but my question is, what was the protocol that you would have taught or thought would have been proper at the time you gentlemen were teaching?
You could possibly bring the family to the scene, or a member of the family to the scene, or in the general area, and then making definitely certain that person is protected, like behind a car or something. You wouldn't put them out there to go in the house or anything.
Right.
You're going to keep them safe. And you know, if it appears that this person is not in an emotional state, it could intensify the situation. Maybe you could let the person talk to them. That would have to be a call on the person in charge at the scene. Evidently there were a lot of officers at this scene. Somebody had to be in charge.
It would be interesting to find out who in the hell that was.
Well,
but nobody will tell us anything.
Well, anytime you have a group situation like that where you've got a bunch of officers, someone is going to be responsible for the coordination of this. There's a sergeant on a shift. There's a lieutenant on a shift. These sort of things. And, you have senior officers. A senior officer is responsible for the person below him. So he's got to make sure this person conforms possibly in a correct way and things of that nature. All of this is you've got to look at the policies. You've got to look at the training officers. You've got to look at the supervision level. And this is how you find out if there are deficiencies or what created these problems. And you work from that standpoint if you're having constant events like this.
So all this has been real hand-holding so far, guys. I want to throw something out there that we're not all going to agree on, okay? The tax man, Chris Elliott, proposed a bill to include law enforcement under the Alabama hate crime statute. Now, let me explain to you my concept of a hate crime, okay? We had to come up with hate crime statutes because all these black folks and gay folks were getting beat to death and otherwise meddled with, and these racist cops down here wouldn't do anything about it. So the federal government came up with a hate crime statute to protect people who weren't being protected in certain communities, okay? So Alabama came up with their own version of the hate crime statute. Of course, it doesn't cover homosexuals, but now we want to lump law enforcement in there. Tell me of one person who's ever hit a cop who didn't get the book thrown at him, or shot at a cop, or killed a cop.
Oh,
they get hammered.
Yeah.
They're front of the line. The whole concept behind
It should be.
scheme. If you want to come up with something, don't be ugly to cops law. Good luck getting that passed. But don't try to tag it. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I don't like the idea of somebody spitting in a cop's face either. I think it's assault. And just because of their profession, I mean, whether you're working at the DMV or whatever, you're working for the state, and people ought not to spit in your face, no matter how upset they are. Agreed?
right.
But to have an aggravator added to a misdemeanor assault, like spitting on somebody, for a mandatory 3 months. You know, Raines and I talked about that. What the hell would your life be like if you went to jail for 3 months? Oh my God. I mean, it's career ending, it's life changing. And, you know, I don't particularly like the chief of police. I got a lot of reasons not to like him. You know, if my niece toilet papers his yard, is it a hate crime? I mean, I'm not saying I'd send her over there to do it, but you understand what I'm saying. He was targeted because he was law enforcement. It's so ridiculous. I hate to even bring it up, but we all agree that no one should put their hands on someone who is doing a job, right, and they're protecting and serving all of us. And Raines, I don't know if you understand, like, my concept of the civil and criminal justice system is we have turned over things that used to end in bloodshed over to a civil and criminal justice system. And these police officers are part of that system. And we have surrendered violence in our lives to them. If somebody did something to me, I don't go over there and beat the shit out of them and take my property back. I go to the cops, and they will charge the man, and we'll go through the process, and he'll go to jail, and I'll hopefully get my stuff back if he hadn't fenced it at Raines' House of Pleasure. So you see what I'm getting at? Yeah. I think it's incredibly important what the police do, but I think we've gotten away from the serving people. Even the guy who's walking out of the back of Walmart with a 40-inch television deserves not to be beat to death or choked to death or shot or whatever else because you're having a bad day. You're going to break his kneecaps or bang his head into the car.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we all agree on these things. But the idea that that police officer out there like looking to violate somebody's civil rights, I think is just a bunch of bull crap.
Yeah, you were talking about the baton earlier. Part of our training, we were in a combat zone, and I was in the military police, but we were in of course, the whole country was a combat zone, but we were on I was in at that point, a Marine Corps air wing. We weren't allowed to carry weapons. All we carried was a billy club because the people, I mean, the military police, what we were doing is watching the rest of the people in the military, right? And most of these were drunken incidences or where people were, say, emotional or something like that. So we didn't put ourselves in a position of using a weapon. We used that billy club, and the guy that taught me said, you hit them in the shin, they're going down. And I can tell you that works. So, I mean, I know what you're saying about that club and with the one with the handle, that could be extremely proficient. But when I look at some of these incidences, I go back to like, wait a minute, why couldn't we be using, like, in 2 or 3 of these incidents, they could have used a beanbag shotgun and probably taken the individual down.
Well, I have no doubt that a beanbag shotgun would have put the person down, but the thing about the utilization of all of this technology and these types of weapons and all came well past my tour of duty as far as law enforcement goes, but they're good devices that keep you from having to take a person's life. I mean, you know, again, you're going back to the policies and procedures of an agency and how they operate, and that's therein is if you put a policy out that you will not carry let's see, go back to my time, not using anything. Let's say a lot of us would carry hot rounds at times, and that is definitely a no-no, but it was good for certain things such as a dog. If you was at a car scene where a dog had been hit by a car, or a cow was knocked down at an accident scene, you know, a heavy round that would definitely put the animal out of its misery after you look for the owner, naturally. But the thing is, those were definitely something you wouldn't load. You wouldn't put plus P ammunition in your weapon and be on a general day-to-day event, because, you know, the damage and it can do and inflict. And, you know, I'm a revolver man, and everybody's got automatics and everything else now. I still love the revolver. The wheel gun's good. It gives you 6 shots. You better be accurate with it.
All right, so I gotta do a little court stuff real quick. The Supreme Court just wrapped up their term, and there are a couple of cases that I want to talk about real quick. Altitude Express versus Zarda, LGBTQ protections under employment law. How about that, Raines?
I'm all for it.
See that?
I'm ecstatic over it.
All right, so
that day.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. So Kansas, of course, you know, if you get fired from your government job, all you get to do is say, well, that picture of me kissing that dude in Cozumel must have come up, and that's why they fired me. So Kansas versus Glover, a case in which the court held that when the police lacked okay, so look, the cops are driving along, they run a tag on a car. The tag comes back expired. So they pull the person over, assuming the person driving is the person responsible for the tag, and they find 10 kilos of cocaine. Did the officer have probable cause to pull them over? The Supreme Court says yes.
Very good. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, you know, keep you damn.
If you're a drug dealer and you're stupid enough not to change the tag, then you need to go to jail.
So McCurt versus Oklahoma is the craziest GD thing I've heard of in my entire life. Have y'all read this thing?
Oh my God, yes, I did.
The Supreme Court
put it all under the PIA.
So the eastern half of Oklahoma belongs to the Cherokee Nation. I don't even know what that could possibly mean under people's property rights and towns being built there, and I don't know. That's
you better be Indian.
I'm going to tell you right now. It means that they could federally mandate through the Bureau of Indian Affairs
the Trail of Tears for the white people.
that federal law enforcement has full jurisdiction, and that federal law enforcement would be tribal police. And I'm here to tell you, the last law enforcement agency you want to deal with in North America is United States Tribal Police, because they are. You think sovereign immunity is something? Try being arrested by an independent nation that doesn't have to observe the Geneva Convention, let alone Miranda or anything else.
So Joey and Dan can tell you we got an Indian reservation right around here.
Well, we're coming north South Baldwin County.
Yeah. So all right. So let me talk about a few more. Colorado Department of State versus Baca, a case in which the court held unconstitutional a Colorado law that prohibits so-called faithless electors. Okay. So what was going on was when, let me think, it was the last election, and you understand we're in a constitutional representative republic, right? And when there's an election, there are delegates that actually cast the 7 votes for president based on the popular vote. So there were a bunch of people that had seen that Hillary had lost, so they cast their vote for some third-party candidate in Colorado, and the people of Colorado didn't think it was very cute. So anyway, they can remove a delegate for not casting their vote per the popular vote. The Department of Homeland Security versus the Regents of the University of California, a case held at the Department of Homeland Security decision to do away with the DACA program. I guess, is that the Dreamer program, right?
Yes. Right.
So they're saying that was capricious for them. So they're not going to do it. So another monumental decision. Now all this shit's happening because John Roberts is easing over into the liberal lane a little bit. So then Espinoza versus Montana Department.
It doesn't matter. It was a ridiculous.
So this other case, Raines, I'm not so hot about. So here they say that educational funding that excludes religious institution violates the free exercise clause of the federal Constitution. Does that make any sense to you?
That's another big one. Big.
Okay, so think about it. If
you can say goodbye to the voucher
for a kid in Baldwin County Public Schools, they pay for that kid, and it's $19,000 a year, whatever it is. What we're saying is you can go to the school board and say, hey, I want my voucher for my 19 grand and I want to go to Catholic school. They've never been able to do that before. The Supreme Court says you can. So I don't know if all the policies for every school board in the whole country is going to have to change, but it sounds pretty damn revolutionary to me.
That's pretty wild.
Like a couple
I don't think it's going to come down to
like giving Oklahoma to the Cherokee.
It's going to come from the state level.
All right. So do y'all have any more
wild.
questions for our guest? I had to get all that Supreme Court mess in there.
Well, really appreciate you gentlemen coming in. I hope that our listeners are listening, and I wish personally that you were still teaching. But it's going to be interesting to see where things go. I don't believe that this can continue in Baldwin County the way it's going before someone says something on the investigation of these crimes, be it they don't do anything themselves, leave it up to the law, and indeed then, they're talking about $35 million for $33 million for a prison. Any one of these lawsuits could be monumentally damaging if they were to lose. But thank you so much for coming, and maybe we'll forward you some of these articles about what we're talking about and get a further response at a later date.
All right, guys.
Gentlemen, I really appreciate you being on here today.
Yep. All right.
And risking your life, because I've been in court this morning and around all kind of people. So for next time, Paul, we're going to talk about the John Melonis, who's running for mayor in Fairhope, and the fact that he worked for British Petroleum. It seems that he hasn't been very forthcoming about that. All of his documentation says that he worked for a Fortune 100 company. BP is still a cuss word around here.
Yes, it is.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I don't know that it's very good on your resume to say that you worked and retired from BP. I mean, people around here, myself, I did not buy BP gas again, and all the stations that were around here were BP are gone.
So, Paul, people must know that I'm supporting Jerry Carl because they keep sending me these flyers. And this one says, Jerry Carl, sketchy money, dirty deeds.
Well, I was going to get into that.
$6 million of taxpayer money in a sweetheart deal. What it doesn't say is that it was hostile. We should have given them the farm to come here to build ships, So then,
you're going to get in these.
Love that. This is better than the swamp thing. It says, meet the resistance. Guess who all the resistance members are? Jerry Carl, Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria, AOC, whatever, how you say her name, and then Joe Biden.
Well,
that looks like that's got Russian interference LLC all over it, buddy.
Yeah, whatever's true about us, we're going to say it's true of the other side. That'll work. That's the ticket.
Maybe.
Oh, my goodness. All right, guys. Well,
you don't think it works.
We'll save a little for next time, and we are going to throw down the gauntlet on Beauvoir.
Yes, we are.
The last home of Jefferson Davis.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about it?
Well, nothing. We have a dispute about certain.
You said next time. Move on.
Next time when Doodle's here to
at 11.
put forth her position. All right, guys. Well, I certainly appreciate your time, Mr. Davis and Mr. Vines. Boys, keep your powder dry. I'll see you next time.